Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to my college football week 6 top 25. A lot of changes have occurred this week, but before I get into my top 25, I actually want to try something different by going over what the actual top 25 is, so people can get a better idea of what the top 25 is versus just mine. Also, with that being said, a like and subscribe and help a comment always helps. Let's get straight into this. So this is the ESPN official top 25 with the AFC coaches poll and the AP top 25. There's a lot of things I disagree with in this list, but majority I agree pretty well with. So first off, they've got Georgia at number 1. I do agree with that now. Georgia's win over Kentucky was very impressive in my opinion. Although certain things like a night game at Georgia, their first top 25 opponent of the year, there was a lot of momentum for Georgia going into this game. I don't think Kentucky, I really was saying a lot about Kentucky going into this game. And once somebody in the comments mentioned that it was a night game at Georgia, I was kind of like, oh, yeah. But still, I tried to stick with my word. I was wrong. And Georgia definitely deserves to be the number 1 team. Number 2 being Michigan. I'm actually not agreeing with this right now because Michigan, they're still yet to play anybody. Ohio State has played one of the harder teams in the Big Ten, and they kicked the crap out of them. So with that being said, I put Ohio State above Michigan. We'll get there later, though. I'll just go ahead and show my list. All right, that was a little foreshadowing, but I'm not going to expose my list yet. Florida State being at number 4. They took care of Virginia Tech. This team is definitely the running candidate for the ACC championship title, but teams like North Carolina and Louisville now look like massive threats to that. Even Miami, I mean, come on. Miami's still a good team. I don't want to give them shit for losing in the fashion that they lost. It was still a horrendous game, but the way they lost, it's nothing against the players and the talent. It was the biggest blunder in college football probably ever. Number 5, we got Oklahoma. Yep, they beat Texas in the Red River rivalry. I don't think anybody except for Oklahoma fans were saying Texas is going to win this game. So yeah, they deserve every ounce of where they're placed. Very, very fantastic. Dylan Gabriel's actually a really good quarterback. He should probably be thrown up into the Heisman race, honestly. Penn State, they didn't play anybody this week. Washington didn't play anybody this week, and Oregon didn't play anybody this week. These two teams will play each other, so we can kind of see what just happened with Oklahoma and Texas, except on a more drastic level because these two teams are definitely the running teams for the Pac-12 title right now. They are by far the best 2 teams in the Pac-12. I'd say it's very, very, very obvious. Texas at number 9. I don't think they should be dropped too much for losing to Oklahoma because Oklahoma is a pretty damn good team. They lost because they made a lot of mistakes. There's a trend this week, I said in my last video, of all the ranked teams that got upset, they turned the ball over a lot. It's a trend in all of them. Oklahoma didn't turn the ball over once except for a blocked punt, but that doesn't really count towards the stats of a turnover because the blocked punt ended up being a touchdown for Texas. That was, I guess, the only turnover for Oklahoma. And yes, it was a game changer. But Texas, they turned the ball over on their first drive, and Oklahoma scored off of it. And then when Texas was driving down the field, they threw a pick in the end zone. Or not like just outside of the end zone, which gave Oklahoma the ball back. I don't remember how the other turnover happened. So I think Texas, if they didn't make bad mistakes, like that first pick on the first drive was horrific. It was a bad mistake. If that didn't happen, if that little turnover right there at the beginning of the game didn't happen, you take away 7 points from Oklahoma and possibly give it to Texas, which is the game changer. However, Oklahoma gave Givens like a missed field goal and, of course, a block punt. So I don't want to necessarily say these teams are bad, or like I don't want to dock these teams points, but you got to move Texas down and you've got to move Oklahoma up. I still think like at the end of the season, of course they're probably going to play each other in Big 12 titles, so this would not happen, but I think these two are literally tied for the same rank. They could play each other in a simulation. It's like a coin flip. Like you could simulate it, and it would be like Oklahoma, Texas, Texas, Oklahoma, Oklahoma, Texas, Oklahoma, Texas, Texas. Like it's like a coin flip between these teams. They are both very solid teams, very good teams. They deserve every ounce of being in the top 10. A team that doesn't deserve being in the top 10 is USC. USC played horrific. They were terrible. The one person who I kind of dogged on for not being a Heisman or whatever, he was the only good player. It was Caleb Williams. The rest of the team looked terrible. They went into triple overtime with U of A, and honestly, U of A should have won this game. Now, I know USC messed up a last-second go-ahead field goal, but ultimately U of A's stats are just better. And U of A had the ball. The play call was terrible. I don't know what they were thinking with the play call. It was awful. So USC walks away with a win. They're still undefeated. But personally, I don't think they're top 10 worthy. A team that is top 10 worthy, in my opinion, or getting back up there is Alabama. They went into A&M, a stadium that can hold 102,000 people in a big-time game. Alabama goes in there and they take care of business. I'm not necessarily going to say that Bama, the game was weird. So it looks like A&M could have come back, but they gave up a safety, a 7-yard sack for a safety. I don't know how it happened. Still haven't watched the game back, but from what the numbers say, that's ridiculous. Texas A&M, it looks like to me, just blundered and sold the game because that made it literally a 9-point game. It went from 24-17 to 26-17, which means you've got to get 2 possessions, which pretty much put the comeback out of reach. So, but still, Alabama, nonetheless, they were up by a good touchdown in that game, and they made the safety happen to make it a 2-possession game. They went into A&M and won. Very surprising because A&M is a pretty good football team this year. Very surprising win, at least for me. I think a lot of people predicted Alabama was going to win, but I thought surely A&M was going to win this game. But Alabama did it, man. They won. Number 12, North Carolina. This team is starting to make their way up for me because they took care of Syracuse. I'm going to point out Depressed Ginger's pick on this. Man, I saw his predictions, and I was like, dude, seriously, he predicted that Syracuse would beat North Carolina on the road. I was like, you're crazy, dude. There's no way Syracuse goes into North Carolina and wins, and it wasn't even close. That was a bad pick by him. I just want to say that because I thought that was really funny. I was really debating on putting that in the comments, but hey, everybody has bad predictions. I had horrible predictions this week. I'm not putting shit on his name. I'm just saying I thought that was funny. I was gonna comment and be like, that is just a terrible take, but I never did. So I guess I'm just saying it now. Not in his comments, but in this video. Nothing against him at all. Just thought it was funny. But North Carolina, Drake May is right back up in the Heisman race. He had a fantastic game. I don't think it's a good Syracuse team, but he had a fantastic game. So I'm starting to like this North Carolina team more. Number 13, we got Ole Miss. I think they're a little highly ranked right now at 13, but I don't necessarily disagree. They have the impressive win against LSU, and I don't know, the Tulane one is kind of weird because Tulane didn't even have their starting quarterback, and now Tulane doesn't look like the best team. It looks like they are receiving votes, so I guess they're probably still winning, but yeah, I don't know. Ole Miss is kind of this weird team. Their defense looks awful, but their offense looks very, very good. They played in a close game against Arkansas as I predicted, but not as high scoring as I predicted. It looks like Arkansas pretty much lost because they ended up turning the ball over twice, but Ole Miss walks away with the victory. I mean, they shouldn't not go up, right? Louisville at 14. I was wrong about this team. I looked at the resume. I said a 5-point win against Georgia Tech is not impressive. A 7-point win against Indiana is not impressive. A 3-point win against NC State is not impressive. And I'm still not too sure about this Louisville team. They definitely impressed me and proved me wrong by kicking the crap out of Notre Dame. But something that's for sure is that Notre Dame gave them this game. Notre Dame gave them 7 total possessions. For Louisville to not put down as many points as they did would be embarrassing. But they did. They did what they needed to do. They won. I think the energy in that Louisville game might have just been different. Honestly, I thought the Duke Stadium would be louder, more dangerous, but Louisville gets it done. Louisville gets it done. They're 6-0. I don't think they're still the best team. I think they will finish off like 8-4, maybe 9-3, which is actually where I have them predicted in my video for the ACC predictions if I ever ended up posting that one. But Louisville, they get the victory against Notre Dame. I mean, they're already 6-0. They're only 3 wins away from being in that 9-point range or 9-win range. So I wouldn't be wrong. But Louisville, they've definitely struggled their wild set of games. They kicked the crap out of Notre Dame. I think they're going to lose later in the season to their respective conference opponents. I think this was a fluke. Nothing impressed me from the stats the Louisville team provided, because when the other team gives you 7 givens, it's hard to not put up the stats that Louisville put up. And even then, they were the stats that they literally had to put up because they got 7 possessions. So I'm still not too sure about this team. But after all, with a win against Notre Dame, and they're one of the only undefeated teams left, they kind of have to start rising up in the rankings. Number 15, Oregon State. This was a weird one. They were playing in a very close matchup at Cal, and then they took off and they won 52-40, I think. Underrated win, in my opinion. But here, I'm going to kind of direct the traffic over to my football team, because one thing that I'm noticing, except for, of course, the USC game, is that ASU's defense is pretty sick. The ASU Cal game was 21-24 at the final score. The Fresno State ASU game, where ASU had 8 turnovers, ASU's defense held them to 29 points. 8 turnovers held Fresno State to 29 points. Oklahoma State game, I think, is 27-15 because we went for like a 4th down on our side of the field, giving points, and then we turned the ball over on our side of the field, giving points. Our defense is pretty sick. The way I look at these teams and like decipher things is oftentimes on how they perform against ASU. I just think teams aren't as good and they'll get rocked, and then they play good. I think ASU's defense is actually pretty solid. I think they're pretty good. I mean, we just held Colorado to by far their lowest scoring game of the year. 27-24 is the final score, and a massive defensive blunder of all things. They somehow let the guy deep. Probably should have been ASUW, but we sold. I'm just saying ASU's defense is pretty sick. So judging on how teams perform against ASU's defense can definitely be like a tool to deciding how teams are. Hence, USC scoring 40. Did I say squirting? Nah, that's crazy. USC scoring 42 points on ASU's defense is pretty impressive. Now, I just wanted to say that because I just like to gas up my team and have some faith. Oregon State beats Cal in a shootout. It was a pretty close game, but still, I think it's pretty impressive by Oregon State because, if anything, Cal is a more offensive team, and Oregon State is kind of I thought a more defensive team, but turns out they're a more offensive team. I mean, their games have been pretty high scoring. I thought they were going to be a very defensive team. They're pretty high. They're a lot higher scoring than I thought. they're a pretty good team. Very good offense. DJ had his best performance by far, and their running back is for real. So Oregon State is deserving of this spot. Utah didn't play, so I guess this is where they are. I don't think Duke played, so this is where they are. UCLA, they go and take down Washington State at home. Another victim of the turnovers, which is right here. So we can kind of just do like a double take here. UCLA, they take care of business. They walk away with an 8-point victory against Washington State. But UCLA's defense, one thing is for sure, UCLA's defense held this Washington State team in place. Washington State, I think they turned the ball over 4 times, but UCLA turned the ball over twice. UCLA's 2 turnovers led to 10 of the 17 points Washington State scored, one being a field goal, one being a pick 6. So UCLA's defense held this Washington State team in check. Very, very impressive by UCLA. They're very deserving of their rank. I still think Washington State's a pretty good team. After all, they were up big on Oregon State, a good 35-14. I think right now this is just another prime example of the home field advantage being so important to these teams. So, yeah, that's just what I have to say about those games. Tennessee being ranked at 20. No, they're just too high. I just don't think they deserve it, man. They got their butt kicked by a Florida team that isn't even receiving votes anymore. Like, how can this team be in the top 25? But, of course, you'll see later that's kind of contradicting. Notre Dame at 21 seems about right. They're one of the only 2-loss teams left in the top 25. This was just they finally got caught up to by the ranked opponents. I mean, they've got to go play USC next week. However, I think things are going to be a little bit different. They were holding their breath. They lost by a last-second touchdown to Ohio State. They barely escaped Duke. They are scraping by, playing their best defensive performance, and Sam Hartman struggling offensively and finally caught up to him. Sam Hartman bursted like a pimple. He bursted like a pimple and turned the ball over 3 times, as well as Notre Dame had 2 fumbles, and they failed to convert 2 fourth downs. It was just a traumatic offensive performance, and Notre Dame obtains their second loss, and just like that, they are out of the college football playoff. Very, 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 very sad, because I really like Sam Hartman, but man, he cannot win against the pressure. He folds under pressure. LSU at 22. This team should not have won this week. Missouri could not have found a better way to sell. They get the ball back. They're at their 10-yard line with 49 seconds. LSU's defense is doggy buns. They can definitely go down the field and score a touchdown to get the go-ahead victory and hand LSU their 3rd loss. What does their quarterback do? He throws the most blatant and worst pick I've ever seen, and it ends up in a pick 6. LSU takes a 49-39 victory. So LSU is deserving of their spot. I think Jaden Daniels is an extremely underrated and very good quarterback. I mean, he was out for a drive, the end of a drive, and what does bro do? He comes right back in on the field and leads them on a monster drive to score a touchdown and a 2-point conversion. He is just something else. He really is a good quarterback. I've hated on him. He really is a good quarterback. Kansas at 23. I think they didn't, or they played somebody. I have no idea. They kind of default into here. They kind of default into this spot. Just because, the teams under him sucked. This is where things get weird. They still have Kentucky ranked, which I think is crazy. I get Miami because Miami blundered in the worst coaching failure ever. I don't think Miami should be, I think they should be docked, but they're still should be recognized as a good team. They shouldn't be like, oh, they suck, they lost to Georgia Tech. No, they should still be recognized as a good team. They had their worst performance ever. I don't think it gets much worse than what they did against Georgia Tech. Sadly, it ended in a loss in the worst way possible. But Kentucky, they got killed, man. I know Georgia's number 1, but it's really kind of difficult having a team in the top 25 that got slaughtered by one of the higher ranked teams, right? So that's my only issue there. But Missouri definitely can't be ranked anymore. Wyoming could. Air Force definitely should. Wisconsin should not. Tulane, maybe. West Virginia, maybe. So, yeah, now I'm going to flick over to my actual list. And I'll try to do it fast because I sat on this for a long time. All right, we are here with this list now, and I already said I agree with this. At number 1, we got Georgia. I kind of already described this, so I'm going to try to go through this part a little bit faster. Number 2, I got Ohio State. I think this because the other number 2 team being Michigan, they haven't played anybody yet, whereas Ohio State takes care of business against probably the 4th best team in the Big Ten. So I think they're more deserving, as well as they've beaten Notre Dame, and they're starting to look like a much better team. I think they're more deserving of the number 2 spot now than Michigan. And I put Florida State at number 3 because Florida State has beaten LSU, who, I mean, holding LSU to 24 points looks really good right now. Like, LSU's offense is what is keeping them in games. Like, LSU's defense is trash. LSU's defense is bad. Like, they're the worst part about their team, but their offense is keeping them in games, in shootouts and stuff. Florida State held this team. I mean, they pretty much held them to 17, but ended up holding them to 24 in the end. That just looks all the more impressive, as well as this Florida State team traveled into Clemson and won. They're still deserving of the number 3 spot, and they took care of business against Virginia Tech. Number 4, I got Michigan. This team just hasn't gotten a chance to prove themselves. I think once they get the chance to prove themselves, they'll jump right back up to number 2, possibly even number 1. I do think this is a really good Michigan team. It's just they haven't played anybody, so you can't decipher much. You can't determine much when they are just playing bad teams. Number 5, I got Oklahoma. They win the Red River rivalry. They win the Red River rivalry in a very memorable way. They win it, even though I've said my certain things about it in Texas turnovers and whatnot. They still win it. They are a very fantastic team. They deserve this spot. Number 6, Washington. This is where I pretty much had them last time, and they didn't play, so yeah. 7, they didn't play. I can't really move these teams up or down because they didn't play. Number 9, Texas. This is, I think, where they are in the normal polls. Very, very good team. It sucks that they lost because I do really think this team could have been number 1. If they would have beaten Oklahoma, I think this team would have been number 1. But they lost. I still don't mind it, though. I think these are still 2 of my favorite teams in the 2 of my 5 favorite teams in the top 10 right now. And number 10, I've got Bama. I refuse to have USC in the top 10 after their weak and garbage performance, and Bama deserves to move up a little bit more in the rankings after a solid win, just not over Texas. I believe as time goes on, Texas will make their way back up, and Bama will sit in this spot. All right, now number 11, USC. Number 12, Louisville. This one was difficult. I still think they should be respected, even though I think what I think, I still think they should be respected for beating Notre Dame because Notre Dame's defense is really sick, and after all, they basically forced Notre Dame to fold. They had the momentum. If they can keep that momentum, they will be a severe threat in the ACC, and this could definitely be a possible spot where they finish off the year. Number 13, I got Oregon State. Oregon State, yep, they take care of business against Cal. I don't know. They play UCLA next week. I think they get to host them, so we'll see if Oregon State's for real. I feel like that's a game that will determine a lot of things. North Carolina, like I said, they're starting to move their way up my happiness list after killing Syracuse, although I just don't think Syracuse is that good of a team. Ole Miss at 15, very offensive team, no defense, so they probably will finish off the year right around there. Number 16, UCLA. This team actually has a pretty solid defense, pretty impressive defense. Number 17, Duke, they didn't play. Number 18, Washington State, keeping the gap between the two because I feel like that is a pretty necessary gap. It feels like a lot having these two teams ranked next to each other, even though they were in a close game. UCLA's defense put this Washington State team on lockdown. I don't think Washington State, unless it was at Washington State, I just don't think Washington State's winning that game. Number 19, Utah, they didn't play anybody, but let's hope they get Cam Rising back this week because we got Utah USC, I think. I think that's next week. We've got Utah USC. We need Cam Rising back so USC can get exposed and Utah can rise. Number 20, Notre Dame. Still think they're a good team with a great defense. Yeah, simply. Number 21, LSU. LSU walked out of Missouri with their pants down, but Jaden Daniels he had his pants up. He played great. He's the best part about LSU. And, yeah, he leads the offense. Number 22, Air Force. I will keep preaching this team's name until they lose. Number 23, I got Kansas. Kansas, they kind of default in here. That's not Air Force. That's Tennessee. They default here. I was thinking about A&M, but since they lost, they can't. I just don't think this team is deserving of a top 25 spot. I would put them at 25, but I feel like 25 is the perfect spot for Miami because I still think they're like a top 25 team and whatnot. Or they have the talent and the skill of a top 25 team. All right, and that is my top 25 list. I spent a lot of time in the ESPN top 25. If you liked this, just let me know in the comments. If you made it this far, a like and subscribe would help. A comment always helps. And that's all for me. Adios.